The news of the transfer portal cycle to this point, in my opinion, is Caleb Downs planning to enter the portal. Now, by the time you're watching this in a one-off video, he may already have his name entered into the portal. As of right now, it is plans to enter. Talked to some folks close to Alabama, as we mentioned at the top of this show. Does not sound like this is a situation where he's going to test the waters and then come back to Alabama. The report from ESPN yesterday was that he was undecided about the portal, or I guess 2 days ago, was undecided about entering the portal or staying at Alabama, wanted to see what happened with the Alabama defensive staff. Alabama hires Ken Womack. I don't know if it was like he didn't like the hire or it was a bad fit, whatever. At the end of the day, Caleb Downs is deciding to go somewhere else. I don't think it's a personal thing with Ken Womack or anything like that. I just think it's Caleb Downs saying, okay, I think I can find a better situation for myself. So again, with this decision, I think there's more than what meets the eye. Because anytime a player of Caleb Downs' caliber enters the portal, everyone is quick to say, well, it's an NIL play. It's an NIL chase. He just wants the bag. He's going to the highest bidder. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that wherever Caleb Downs goes, there won't be some NIL deal in place for him to be able to benefit from. That's college football right now. Like, everyone is in that space if you enter the portal and you're a high-profile player like Caleb Downs is. But to assume that's why he's transferring, or that's where he's going to go, to the highest bidder, I just think that's very, very far-fetched. I think that's very incorrect. So make sure you're subscribed. We will have a reaction as soon as Caleb Downs does commit to a certain school. We'll give you our short list of schools we're watching for him right now. But again, make sure you're dialed in here so you don't miss a minute of what we got coming here on this channel. So going back to what I was saying, Caleb Downs and his decision to transfer, I don't think it's this massive indictment on Alabama. I don't think it's this massive statement on Kalen DeBoer and what he's doing at Alabama and the staff he's putting together. I don't think it's any of that. I think for Caleb Downs, his commitment out of high school, yes, it was to that script A. Yes, it was to the school overall that is Alabama. But, like, if we're calling a spade here, when you get recruited out of high school, you commit to a person. You commit to a staff. You hear guys say it all the time as to why they end up committing to a school on signing day when they throw on that hat. They say things like, I had a good relationship with the staff. I felt comfortable there. I liked Coach so-and-so. The people Caleb Downs committed to were Travaris Robinson, who's now at Georgia, and Nick Saban, who's now retired. People commit to people. Recruits commit to people. We would love for them to commit to schools and commit to their major and commit to the university and all that. And, like, I think some of that's factored into your decision, but with how much time you spend around your coaching staff, you better like the people you're committing to. You better make that a major point of your decision. And so Caleb Downs, the people he committed to, are no longer at Alabama. It's hard to blame him for saying, you know what, I think I need to search for a better situation. And going back to what we said about the whole NIL deal, like, if NIL was the main point for Caleb Downs, if that was the end-all, be-all, I do not believe Alabama would have been the school for him out of high school. Now, I have no inside information here. I don't know the specific numbers for different schools. But, like, what do we know about Alabama? Are they are they usually at the forefront of the NIL discussion? No, it's typically some other schools we're talking about. So if a bag was it for him, I think he probably could have gone somewhere else. That's my feeling. I don't know that to be true, but that's my feeling. So what is Alabama losing here? I think it's pretty straightforward. You're losing the best player on your roster. I mean, what Caleb Downs did last season on the field, 70 solo tackles, 2 interceptions as a true freshman in the SEC. My guy did numbers like Goodwill Hunting. And also, you can tell a lot about a player by how his coaches talk about him, especially a coach like Nick Saban. And we said it yesterday in our video talking about the idea of Caleb Downs transferring and if he maybe would or wouldn't test the waters. Nick Saban, in his post-retirement interview with Reese Davis, was asked point blank, who were the players that were tough to say goodbye to? And Nick Saban specifically mentions a true freshman in Caleb Downs. If that doesn't speak volumes to how highly the greatest of all time Nick Saban thinks about Caleb Downs, I don't know what does. So the dude's a baller, and I said this yesterday too. I think he's a thermostat kind of player. I think the way that he carries himself, by nature of the way people talk about him, he steps into a room and sets the temperature for that workout or for that meeting. And I think the leadership quality of what he brings there is obviously massive. So if you're Alabama, this is going to provide a lot of narratives, probably provide some uneasiness. But again, I don't think it's so much a statement on Bama as much as it is Caleb Downs saying, hey, listen, the people I committed to are no longer here. I'm going to go look for some other people to commit to. So the question now becomes, who's going to win the Caleb Downs sweepstakes? And I don't think this is a Rubik's Cube to solve, really, in terms of who's in it. The front runner for just about everybody, if you were to ask them, I think has to be Georgia, right? Like, they feel like the clear front runner here for a number of reasons. And the most obvious point to this, Travaris Robinson was cited in the ESPN report as a reason as to why Caleb Downs would consider hitting the portal. If a certain coach is a reason as to why you would consider transferring, you have to believe he's also a reason as to why you would commit somewhere. And Caleb Downs, should he end up transferring to Georgia, would be coached individually by Travaris Robinson, with him being the co-DC there, working with the safeties as well. Like, that feels pretty straightforward. Also, talking about priorities, there's this thought around the NIL and, oh, he's only after the bag. Like, that's what every, I think, bitter fan likes to say when they feel a certain kind of way about their player leaving their school. Caleb Downs deciding on Alabama out of high school tells me his priorities were development and competing against the best of the best. That was why you go play for Nick Saban and go get coached by him. So you have to imagine that priority probably didn't change a whole lot over 1 year playing in the collegiate ranks. So if Nick Saban is no longer coaching, who is as good an option when it comes to development and competing against the best of the best? I think it's Kirby Smart. You look at his defenses, you look at the number of draft picks Georgia's put into the league, you look at how they've developed across the board there. Like, Georgia feels like it checks all the boxes and then some. So also, when you look at Georgia, kind of being that clear front runner, you have to factor in the geographical part of this. And I don't know this is really the major point for him to go to Georgia, if that's where he ends up going. But, like, dude's from the state of Georgia, played his state championship game in Atlanta, which is like, an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Athens. Like, it's just up the road. The bottom line here is Georgia makes a lot of sense. I'd be surprised if it's not the Dogs. But even with that being said, we got to kind of see how this thing plays out. Another school to watch here, and we talked about it yesterday. Ohio State feels like one to watch. I was in Columbus, Ohio, when Caleb Downs was a senior in high school. And it was the day of the Ohio State-Michigan game. Massive day for recruits. A ton of guys that already committed are there. Brandon Ennis was there. Cardinal Tate is there. And talked to somebody close to Ohio State that told me before the game, like, hey, Caleb Downs is taking a surprise visit today to this game for Ohio State. Like, he's going to be on the sideline here. And the reason why that's significant is he went to Ohio State-Michigan over the Iron Bowl of Alabama-Auburn. He's been committed to Alabama this entire time. So the fact that Ohio State got that surprise visit that late in the process, it has to speak some volumes to how Caleb Downs feels about Ohio State. I don't know how they'll factor in this time around, but the fact they were a finalist for him out of high school, I think deserves some consideration. The Jim Knowles defense, man, too, the way that he operates that thing, that's fun to play in now. That's a fun defense to play in, especially with how exotic they are with the safeties, what they would ask him to do to come up and play the run, probably get to blitz the quarterback a little bit. Like, I think you would get to do a little bit of everything in that defense. So Ohio State would make sense, and we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. I also have to believe that the development side of things for Ohio State, the way they've had some strong defenders in the league, not so much at the safety position consistently, but just across the board, Ohio State, if you ball at Ohio State, the next level is every bit as accessible to you as anywhere else. So we'll keep an eye on Ohio State. And those are the two you're going to hear about the most, Ohio State and Georgia. Probably not in that order, probably Georgia then Ohio State. But one more school that I want us to kind of keep a close eye on, the dark horse of this whole thing for me, is Florida State. Now, again, I would be wildly surprised personally if Caleb Downs didn't end up in Georgia. But with that being said, I don't think you can count Florida State out in any portal recruitment. I mean, correlation isn't causation, but heck, Florida State, they've landed 5 players from Alabama so far in this portal cycle. Mike Norvell has proven like he is going to be a dog when it comes to recruiting the portal. There's clearly the resources to land top guys if that were to be a factor in this recruitment. And also, talk about pedigree and development all playing a factor in landing Caleb Downs. I truly believe that. I think that's probably the number one priority for him. Patrick Surtain, senior, who coaches the secondary at Florida State, played in the league for double-digit years, had a successful career. You have to imagine he would have a close relationship with Caleb Downs if he were to end up in Tallahassee and kind of be someone that he were to tutor very closely. Like, I think Florida State, if you're walking out the reasons, makes sense. Now, again, there's no smoke around this. There's no buzz around this. But if you're looking for a school that's outside of those two that could maybe somehow factor into this thing and be a surprising school to watch, I think Florida State's a pretty solid dark horse. So, again, Caleb Downs plans to enter the transfer portal. This is not a down on Bama kind of situation. It's definitely a loss for Bama. No way around it. Never a good thing to lose the best player on your roster. It would be a gut punch if he went to the school that you played in the SEC championship next season. But at the end of the day, people commit to people. Very difficult for me to sit here and blame Caleb Downs, given the nature of the situation and given the nature of just recruiting in general. So Caleb Downs, wherever he goes, man, he's going to be an immediate impact player. I think we've all seen what he's capable of. I think he would be a factor anywhere he ends up landing. But again, he's proven what he can do. And the school I'm watching transparently is the Georgia Bulldogs. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.